What's up, guys? Tambo here with your weekly core report. With the first week of NBA in the books, our Run Pure Sports hot streak continues. RPS has been on a roll, and NBA kicked off with some big winners. BigT hit 58,000 across both sites on opening night. New member Jeff Nugent hit for 10K. Shawnee hit for 22K. And on night 2, Eden Cohen shipped for a monster $250,000, taking down the main $888 tournament on DraftKings. On Wednesday, Locks hit for $72,000 on DraftKings, and on that same night, I hit my biggest NBA win yet, shipping for over $100,000 on FanDuel by simply using the premium content produced by our Run Pure Sports team. Glock's heat map provided me with the info I needed to build my lineup and help me ship. And it wasn't just NBA producing big winners. BigT pushed Guz the Bus Edwards hard on the Sunday Morning Wood Show.
I know we're saving money at running back this week, but are you spinning up for Derrick Henry?
Yeah, I mean, I can't play Derrick Henry when I'm playing Gus the Bus. I mean, that's tough.
How did every game finds its way back to Gus?
Gus went off, scoring 2 touchdowns at only 2% ownership. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel to get great calls like this for free on a daily basis. Guz was also featured in Big T's player pool, along with Bengal stacks. The Week 7 Burrow to Chase connection was on fire, leading to some big wins for RPS members. Congrats to P451017 for riding that stack to $15,000. And shout out to DK for 5 for staking Corey Pooler, who hit for $1,500. DK for himself hit for $4K on the afternoon slate. To top off the week, our members ran pure in some Showdown contests too. Last Thursday, I shipped another King of the Beach seat with plays I highlighted in my attack plan, available to premium members, featuring Jawan Johnson in the captain slot. And the winning continued on Sunday's Showdown slate with a slew of RPS logos sharing in a first place finish. Congrats to Bring the Noise, who entered 2 different lineups, which actually both tied for first. He was joined at the top by fellow RPS members Sully's World, Nuance 7, Molliver, Jay Gingery, FF Guru TX, Dub KJ, and T Brad 30 joined in, turning $68 into $1,600. Shout out as well to member Alec for turning $20 into $10K in MLB. Congrats again to all our members. If you want to be featured in the core report, drop your winning lineup in our Members Never Win channel in our premium Discord. If you're not a member, join now. You won't find a better value with all sports included for one low price. Remember, if you're not winning with us, you're watching us win. Until next time, let's keep running pure.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Run Pure Sports NBA Hardwood Show. We're here breaking down the 4-game Tuesday night slate. We're kind of talking a little bit before we hopped on for being a 4-game slate. It's actually pretty appealing. I'd say 4 solid games for DFS purposes and a couple actually good basketball games as well. So yeah, excited to kind of dive into it. I'm joined by Mangone and DC. Go to you first, Mangone. NBA basically a week in here. Just wanted to get your early thoughts on how the season's been going so far in terms of DFS and just like the teams and the structure of the NBA.
Yeah, good start to the season. Nothing huge hits, right? But I'm definitely pumped about this one. I think it's a good little slate. I've had a good start to the year, and just trying to keep this thing moving along here. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to think about this slate, but only 4 games, a lot to look at. And I think there's enough off the board plays, enough really good plays, and enough spots to make pivots. You're not just staring at a spot and you're like, well, I can't not play this. And now I'm in a 2v2 or 3v3, right? I think there's enough on the board to have a good time, enjoy the slate. And games are spaced out a bit enough where you have that late game too, to kind of, hey, let's say DFS, not that it's over, but let's say you don't have a lot from the late game. I don't know, you can sweat out a pretty fun game of Warriors and Suns as well, or maybe hit up a Showdown slate on that, which I'm sure we'll have the Showdown playbook up for you guys as well. So be sure to check that out on the site.
Yeah, it has to be some solid Showdown contests for Warriors, Suns. We'll have a playbook, core plays, all that up on the website as well. Head over to your DC. MLB is winding down, so I'm sure you're kind of making your shift over to the NBA streets. Any initial thoughts for you here this season?
Yeah, it's been a fun start to the season. We're already seeing some of the tanking shenanigans perhaps starting early tonight, specifically with OKC. I don't know if you guys I assume you've seen, if you've been on Twitter at all, the Victor Wembanyama highlights. He's just going to be crazy. So it's going to get wild, I think, especially toward, as we get, halfway through, middle part, toward the end of the season, but a long way to go till then. But a couple teams, OKC, I think we're going to see them, we already kind of see it tonight. SGA and Giddey, I think they both probably could actually play in this game. We'll see if SGA ends up going. But yeah, the slate looks good. NBA is kind of one of a weirder sport where like sometimes there's a 10-game slate and you can't really find any players that you're in love with. And then other times like tonight, there'll be a 2-game slate that seems loaded. And it's just kind of finding the balance of, is there enough good plays out there? And then maybe not being overwhelmed, right? Like on a 4-game slate, if you get your lineups right, your plays right, there's less likely to be just like random ass dudes that are 1% owned, on a 12-game slate that can go off that you have to have. So I do like the variety that we get in the NBA in terms of the slate sizes. And yeah, tonight looks like a good one to me.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that definitely stands out, a lot of like viable options, Mangone and myself are on the cash chart for today, and you kind of just go through and we post the guys that we think are like cash game playable. And obviously you can play them in tournaments too, but on a 4-game slate, maybe you find, 2 or 3 guys for each position. We already have it up on the site, and both of us, a lot of plays here in play for cash games for sure, which means, a lot of GPP plays as well. We have some injury news, obviously, on the slate. SGA, I think everyone kind of expected him to be out. Well, they upgraded him to questionable. That game is at 8 p.m. Eastern, so 1 hour after lock. Each game has its own unique start time, which is good for late swapping and, just going through your lineups and making sure everything's good to go. So let's go ahead and hop on into it. First game on the slate, we have the Pistons, we have the Wizards, a 220 total. Wizards favored by 5.5, depending on where you're looking. Solid options here. I mean, I'm going to continue to play Cade Cunningham. I kind of talked about it on the opening slate that he was on. We haven't seen the ceiling, but just a very stable floor, 37, 38, 36 fantasy points. On a 10-game slate, that's probably not enough to get it done. But if he hovers around 40 tonight, I think he's definitely a guy that could potentially be in the optimal. The upside's massive for him too. And then Isaiah Stewart has been very steady, 5.3K. He's 29, 26, 35 fantasy points, another high floor type play. So kind of like him a little bit too. And then the price finally came down on Beal, 8.4K for Beal. Kuzma's had some solid performances this season, a 47 fantasy point game, and even Porzingis, who has a nice price tag coming in at 7.7. So right out of the gate, I think we have a very appealing game from the fantasy perspective. I think got 5 or 6 guys that we can consider here. So DC, I'll toss it over to your thoughts here on Pistons. Wizards.
Yeah, not the 2 best teams in the world, but at least for now, 2 teams that do seem to be trying to win. Detroit obviously has kind of that young core. And at this point, you got to be out there trying. We've seen it with Cade Cunningham, like you said, hasn't hit the ceiling game yet, but we saw some last year, and it's kind of just a matter of time before he gets there. Could certainly do it against the Wizards. Wouldn't shock me at all. I think he's in play 7,900, like you said, on DraftKings. Beyond him for the Pistons, like Sadiq Bey, I think is a pretty good play. 3 games, ultra games over 30 minutes. And then, Isaiah Stewart, 5,300. I bet he flies maybe a little bit under the radar tonight. Been putting up pretty solid games for that price point and really hasn't shot the ball yet well either. If you look at his field goal percentages, they've been much below his career norms, even from 3, 1 for 4, 1 for 6, and 1 for 4 from 3 so far. So, if he is getting it up there, shooting the ball, if he is able to get hot, I do think there's upside for him at 5,300. So for the Pistons, it's mostly Cade. I'm looking at Cade, Sadiq Bey, and Isaiah Stewart as the primary options for me. Jalen Duren, I don't know how to pronounce it for sure, but he's got a little bit of upside too. I wouldn't play him with Isaiah Stewart, but he could be a decent pivot if you wanted to go that direction. And then, Washington, Bradley Beal, again, he's been a little bit slow start to the year, but this is a really good matchup, obviously, against Washington. So you can certainly look to him. Porzingis, like you mentioned, I think is one of the top options at center. He's been out there some pretty big minutes. While he's healthy, you can certainly rely on the upside. And I do think because this game, doesn't really have injury news, at least compared to the other three, you will get, I think, most of these players relatively low owned in a pretty good game environment. And, in the other games, you're looking at kind of backups that are going to fall and do those 30 plus minutes. In this game, it's the good players on the team that you pretty much know are going to get those minutes. So could be a good pivot here for the first game of the night.
Yeah, it is a good point. I mean, this is one game that does not necessarily have significant injury news. The other three, well, two for sure do. And people love just flocking to those injury games and playing the guys that they think get the bump. So I think, this does have a chance to go a little bit overlooked for sure. Mango, what are your thoughts here on this Pistons and Wizards game?
Yeah, it's interesting to talk about because if you look at, I think last night's slate is a great example of what could happen tonight. You could easily see, if you remember last night, DC, I mean, you and I were in the Up the Lock show. What was our conversation? Our conversation was, we just want to wait on this news, right? On the Jazz, and we want to wait on the Rockets, and that's what we want to figure out. And everyone's waiting on it. And it wasn't just you and I doing it, right? Every single person was. And part of me said to myself, well, let me look at this Sixers game. I'm sure people are playing some guys from there. And then there's another game. And there's another game. Surely enough, not everyone's waiting like me, but everyone did wait for the most part. It was one of those situations where I ended up looking at one of these teams that I found and I'm like, this is just a 1v1 off the optimal. What am I doing? That's not the best team to put out there in some of these contests that I'm playing because I wasn't in necessarily double up. So I was kind of frustrated with the lineup that I built. I could see people doing it again here, where maybe taking a shot on one early guy naturally gives you a little bit of differentiation. And on top of that, you're also still have enough spots to make changes. You also have to understand, let's say you're already locked in on playing a CJ McCollum. Well, then you can't be flexible with that position. So understand what guys you might be playing later on could be guys that you're already pretty much locked into. That's something to think about. So
yeah, one real quick, just lesson, that I was kind of reminded of last night is when you do get the unexpected news, right? Everybody thought Garuba was going to get the start at center for the Rockets. We did too. I mean, all indications were that. And then post lock, it turns out he's coming off the bench. I kind of ended up getting sort of stuck with him where it was hard to find pivots because he was super cheap. And, I played a bunch of James Harden, who was expensive and who was awesome. But, the lesson though, was he still ended up being big chalk. I think he was 30 to 35% in most
he was
places.
Even 40% in high stakes, DC. He did not actually get the correct adjustment projection wise, in my opinion. I honestly think he was really awful chalk.
Yeah, he definitely was. The lesson, and I ended up with more of him than I should have or than I wanted to. But the lesson there is these chalk plays in later games, right? If they get, they're coming off the bench or whatever, or for whatever reason, their projection should go down. Their ownership will not go down as much as it should. I mean, if people didn't expect Garuba to get the start, he would have been 3% owned. Instead, He was 30 to 40% owned. So the lesson is get off of those previous, what we were very sure were going to be chalk plays. If they're no longer, if their projection goes way down, if they're no longer starting or whatever, and lock has already happened, do your best to swap off those players because a lot of people won't do it. And those plays end up being some of the worst chalk on the slate.
Especially this early on in the season when you're not certain of a team's rotation. People might think they know what a coach is going to do. You don't know what a coach is going to do, until you see a pattern in the regular season. And, a lot of people say, oh, well, I like him just as much coming off the bench. For some situations, that's possible. Yeah, maybe. But more times than not, you want the guys that's starting. I mean, that's just how it works. And people try to tell themselves a different story. You see it all the time.
I mean, I'm sure what everyone told themselves, and I kind of told myself this too, is he could still be okay. He's still cheap. Yeah. And that's true, but not when he's chalk, right? When he's chalk and everybody's on it, you got to try to find a way to get off those plays. So that was a mistake that I made last night, and I'm sure a lot of people did. So wanted to bring it up.
Do you know why you didn't make that change? Because you were staring at your lineup and you said, How do I get off Kelly Olynyk? How do I get off Lauri Markkanen? You were staring at all these Rockets too, KPJ and Jalen Green, and that's what forced you to keep him in there. You didn't want to get off those other plays, and that's why I call out when you build your teams and you're like, oh, maybe I can make a pivot later here. Understand, maybe you already have like some guys you look at and you're like, he's already locked in. I'm already playing him, so he has to count as a locked in piece for you if you think in that way. So that's why it's important to understand that. And that's why if you take a shot on one of these Detroit Pistons or Washington guys, like a Jaden Ivey at shooting guard, you take a chance on him and he gets you to 40, or a Cade Cunningham, if he gets you 50, Kyle Kuzma, let's say he goes for, he can go for 50 in this spot. These guys could be real big differentiation plays that could get you to the top of the leaderboard, and you still have enough flexibility for your lineups.
Yep. Anything else here, Mangone, in the Pistons and Wizards game?
Sorry, what'd you say, Hoop?
Just do you have any other spots you're interested in here in the Pistons Wizards game?
Yeah, I think the other thing we should call is like, I think Bogdanovich at 5.5 is too cheap. If the guy did get hot and it is a revenge game, I'm going to call it a bunch of ridiculous revenge games today, because I already did the rundown with spread and there's some ridiculous ones. Not saying that's ridiculous, but he played for the Wizards, easily could get hot too from downtown. I'm sure Kuzma will be on him at times, and Kuzma can get lazy on defense. So don't think Bogdanovich is the worst idea. And like, Isaiah Stewart's not bad too at 5.3K. I would just caution, don't like load the boat on this game, but like, let's say you were building 50 lineups today. If you're building 50, I don't hate the idea of just saying, maybe just dedicate 10 teams to playing at least one guy and just one max from this game, and having it mix and match one of those guys, and maybe just kind of fall into like the nuts scenario and then can mix and match some of these other really good plays in this next game, and it can get you to the top of the leaderboards.
Yep. All right. If you guys haven't done so already, please do us that favor. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Helps us to continue to bring you guys these shows for free on a daily basis. Not only NBA, we have a lot of NFL content coming out, PGA content. So make sure to hit like and subscribe. Helps us to continue to bring you guys these shows for free. After us, we have the Up to Lock show, Holden, JSU, and BigT, and they'll take you up to lock. And that is part of the premium product over at Run Pure Sports. So you need to be a member to get access to that video. So head on over to Run Pure Sports, get signed up. Next game, pretty significant injury news. We have the Mavs, we have the Pelicans. On the Pelicans side, no Herb Jones, no Brandon Ingram, no Zion Williamson. That will result in the Pelicans guys being pretty popular on the slate. On the Mavericks side, no Tim Hardaway Jr. Well, not officially. I guess he's labeled as doubtful, but doubtful at, what is it, like 90% of the time the doubtful guys sit. So can go ahead and kind of assume that he is going to be out. On the Mavericks side, I think Dinwiddie's the guy that gets the biggest boost. 5.4K on DraftKings. And then the Pelicans, kind of have to see the starting lineup, but they're going to have a lot of guys here that are playable for DFS purposes. Mangone, I'll go to you first. Thoughts here on this Mavericks Pelicans game?
Yeah, definitely a game that I think we want to go to today. We want to have some interest in. If you look at Dallas and the Pelicans, Luka's probably going to be like a raw points play. And then CJ McCollum is like a really strong play because all those guys are out, right? I think the projected starting lineup, I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm assuming it's CJ McCollum at the point guard position. I think they're going to go Devontae Graham at the 2. Then they're going to follow it up with Murphy at the 3. Then they'll go Nance 4, and then Valanciunas 5. And then if they do that, I assume Najee Marshall comes off the bench at 3.2K, and he could be a better play than Trey Murphy possibly if like Murphy got in foul trouble. And like that, like salary could be enough to make some things work for your lineup. I think Larry Nance, really good play in that 5K range because he's a great fantasy producer. So I'm going to look at him. I think he's really interesting. And then I'm definitely going to think about Jose Alvarado. I think he's a really, really good play on this slate. What I think you could see happen is Devontae Graham go out there, chuck up some bad shots. Then they realize late in the game, as Alvarado's playing better, they say, we need to get him out there with McCollum and have 2 ball handlers to be able to dish the rock and be able to keep up with this team. So I really think that you are going to see Alvarado maybe close that game out. I think he's a really interesting play at 4.2K and someone that I'm considering for sure. On the flip side, I talked to Spread about this on the rundown before. We talked about Tim Hardaway Jr. I thought it could affect stuff, but really, how much is it going to affect? Maybe it helps Spencer Dinwiddie out a little bit, but it's really Luka or bust for me here. The one other guy I'm really thinking about is just Christian Wood. Look at the minutes he's played, 24 and 25 minutes. And the dude is 41.5 and 47.5 DK points. At 7.6, I would sign up for either one of those performances tonight. And let's say he somehow gets 31 or 30 minutes. I mean, he could absolutely have a monster game. Sure, could it go the other way and maybe the minutes are still in the same spot and he doesn't get as much production? Yes, it could, but I don't think anyone's on Christian Wood today. I think it's a really interesting contrarian tournament option that you should at least be thinking about today on this slate.
Yeah, I love that call in tournaments. I mean, no one's going to be on him coming off the bench. Pretty steep price tag 7-6, but the upside's massive. I mean, we've seen over the years, I mean, mid-20s, playing time, he can get to 50, over 50 with these. So I think that is a solid under the radar play, should not have much ownership. DC, thoughts here on Mavs Pelicans?
Yeah, the Mavs seem relatively simple. Obviously, Luka is an awesome play. Assuming Hardaway is out, I do think we're going to see big minutes out of Dorian Finney-Smith, just because they're a little thin on the wing. He's not the most exciting play, but I think he's, 4.6K, something like that. I think he'll be out there for a bunch of minutes if you need 4.7K on DraftKings. And I think he's even cheaper on FanDuel, if I recall. Yeah, 4.3K. So if you need some salary savings, he's interesting. And then, yeah, Christian Wood, I was on him that first game. He was awesome. And he's going to be low owned again. People don't want to play a bench player at 7,600 who's only playing, 25 minutes a game, but he's done it 2 games in a row. He's got a huge role in this team. He fits perfectly with Luka. And there's no reason that he couldn't play 30 plus minutes, right? If he gets hot, they keep him out there. They need him out there to win the game. I mean, it happens all the time, right? You see a 2-game sample size and you just assume it's going to always be that way. Not necessarily the case. So I do think Christian Wood, a fun tournament play, but obviously it's the Pelicans who are, I think that the kind of the critical component to this slate, kind of like the Rockets were last night. Mangone, you predicted your starting lineup. I actually think they're going to go. My prediction is they go a different direction. So they were starting CJ McCollum at the point guard, but he's really more of a natural 2. So I think they slide him to the 2 and put in either Alvarado or Graham as kind of the point guard, whatever you want to call them. 1, 2, the 2 guards. But really, all 3 guys that they're missing, right? Ingram, Zion, and Herb Jones. That's the 2, 3, 4, right? They have enough point guards. They've got 3 point guards on the roster, and they've got centers too. Obviously, Jovel, Larry Nance. They've got Jackson Hayes and Guillermo Hernan Gomez. They've got 4 guys who can play the 5. Where they're really thin is at that 2, 3, 4 spot. So I think Trey Murphy, I would be really surprised if he doesn't start. I think he's going to play big minutes, and he's played well so far. I like him a lot. Mangone mentioned Najee Marshall. I think he's playing 14 minutes. I'd be surprised if he didn't get bumped up to 25 plus. I wouldn't even be shocked if he's in the starting lineup. And then the Nance Valanciunas thing is interesting too, because if you look at the last game that they played, that game went to overtime. So what is that? 53 total minutes there, 48 plus the 5. Valanciunas and Nance didn't play a single minute on the court together, not one. They subbed in and out for each other every single time. One came out, the other came in. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen for sure, but it is a possibility. And if that's the case, right, like the starting lineup for this game will kind of indicate what their plan is. If it's Nance off the bench, that probably means they're going to stick with Valanciunas, Nance at the 5 in that rotation. In that case, I kind of don't really want either guy, right? Because if they're going to split those minutes, you really want to go to the other Pelicans. Specifically, I think Trey Murphy 3 and Najee Marshall, the 2 guys I'm looking at. And then, CJ McCollum, especially if he starts kind of alone in the backcourt, if they do go with like a Marshall, Murphy, and then, maybe they do go Nance at the 4. At that point, McCollum, I think, is just going to have all the work, ball handling, creating his own shot. So I do really like CJ McCollum regardless, but depending on the starting lineup, and this is another situation where, if you think Larry Nance is going to start and then he doesn't, probably try to get off of him, right? Because at that point, he might just be the backup 5. And you don't want to play, I don't think, on this slate, just a pure backup center for 5K, when Jovel could easily play a whole bunch of those minutes. So this is one where you're going to have to pay attention to the starting lineup. I kind of hope we don't get it before lock because, I think maybe we can adjust better than the field does. But certainly one to pay attention to and, try to take some clues based on, base your minutes and your projections based on what the starting lineup ends up being.
Now, the good thing is if you are on Nance and you need to make a pivot, I mean, there's going to be a lot of options at the forward position at similar price points. You have in the next game, Norman Powell, Robert Covington, right around there, small forward, power forward, Cam Johnson, Bridges. You're going to have like 5 or 6 guys to choose from, potentially more if like SGA is ruled out. So got a lot of flexibility, even if you are on Nance. But I do agree, like we need the starting lineup here. I mean, this is a team that typically rides their starters. And, if Nance comes off the bench, there's definitely some risk. So we want to see who starts in this spot for sure. But it's 30 minutes after life. We might have it even before the first game lock. So
probably,
definitely something to keep an eye out for. Before we get into the next game, wanted to shout out some of our members in the Members Never Win segment, which is obviously a play on words because our members have crushed and our coordinators have crushed. Not only since we started this whole thing, but recently. So some big ROI wins too. Alec turned $20 into $10K in MLB. Matthias Mark turned $10 into $15K in NFL. Just huge, 10-20 bucks into 5 figures back to back there. And then Jeff Nugent turned $37 into $10K in NBA. Our guy Shawnee, $22,000 in NBA. Sweet Boy, $270,000 in NBA. That was last Wednesday. Took down the big, I think it was an 888 contest on DraftKings. The first big slate. It was last Wednesday. And then, went ahead and gave out some tickets too on the Friday show. So love seeing that. And then our guy Tambo, on Thursday night, I believe it was $100,000 in NBA, and he won a King of the Beach seat in NFL. So congratulations to all the winners. If you want to get shouted out in this segment, send us your winning lineup, send us your screenshot, and we'll shout you out during our Members Never Win segment. All right, 2 more games. Let's see how we're doing on the likes. We got about 750 watching, only 220. Wow, that's not going to get the job done. We got to get up to 400, and we only have 2 games left. So if you want the plays of the day, I suggest you start pounding that like button. Nice viewership here, 750 on this 4-game slate. But the likes, as our guy JT Hayes says, very hurtful. So we're sitting at 220. We got to get that sucker up to 400. Last time I'm going to ask for that. Clippers, Thunder. On the Clippers side, we have the injury news that we need. Paul George is going to be out, Marcus Morris out, and that's it. And that's pretty substantial news. Paul George obviously being out. On the OKC side, no Josh Giddey. As I said in the opening, we thought that Gilgeous-Alexander was going to sit. Well, now they upgraded him to questionable, and pretty substantial news. I mean, if he sits, I think we can take a look at a few Thunder guys. If he plays, most of this Thunder team probably out of play for me just because we have better situations. I'll go to you, Mangone. I mean, what do you think? I mean, do you think he plays? Do you think he sits? And then how do you plan on handling the news? Either way it ends up breaking.
Well, it's tough to know because the Thunder head coach, he said this weekend, his quote was, I'm not telling anyone my lineup. I'm going to keep this thing close to the vest because I want a competitive advantage. The classic move, which I don't know what
from the number one tanking team in the league. That's cute.
Yeah, it's absurd. Yeah, this was a weekend note. I think it was on Sunday, so you guys may have missed it, but it was kind of ridiculous that he ended up claiming that. SGA could certainly play. It's a little SGA revenge game, I guess, but if SGA does play and there's no Josh Giddey, doesn't that make him an elite tournament play? I mean, who on earth is putting this dude in their lineups? Like, he could be a really interesting pivot off of a Devin Booker for sure on this slate. So not going to completely count that out because it's going to be a difficult thing to click on for sure, I think, for people when it gets closer and closer to that start time. If SGA sits, let's talk about the scenarios that we got to go through. For one, look at the guard position. Trey Mann, 5.5K. Isaiah Joe, 3K. Now, I'm not dying to play Isaiah Joe. I want to kind of get some word on if he's starting or how many minutes he might play. But I think Trey Mann is going to be an elite play. He's 5.5K. But the one thing to think about is I don't think you want to put him in your point guard spot. I think you really want him in that shooting guard spot because what shooting guards are you dying to play tonight? Look at that position as a whole. Yes, there's some good plays that you can go to, but I think Trey Mann is best served in the point guard spot because if you put him in or in the shooting guard spot, if you put him in point guard, well, then where does Luka go? He goes in guard. CJ McCollum goes in util, and now you've hurt yourself a little bit in some of your construction. So that's a very important note to think about when building out your teams. Then I want to look at the next one, Aaron Wiggins. That's the guy that I think is going to be one of the beneficiaries. I think Lou Dort and Trey Mann are the two primary ball handlers, but the next guy up that could actually see some good opportunity is Wiggins. And he's 3.1K. He's 2.9K cheaper than Dort. He is I think like 2.4 or 6K cheaper than Mann. I think he's a really good play, small forward eligible, helps get a lot for your lineup. Definitely someone that I'm looking at for sure on this slate. Then it kind of gets muddier when you look at some of these other forwards. I think Kenrich Williams could be a guy that sees a little bit more usage. I don't understand what's going on with Darius Bazley. I mean, he goes 17 minutes, 21 minutes, then he goes 4 minutes against Minnesota. Don't totally understand the reasoning behind it. I think it's because they were just rolling against the Timberwolves. If he's in the starting lineup at 4K, he's not someone that's on a lot of people's radar. He'll be on my radar and someone that I look at and putting at the power forward or possibly even the center position because of what it could do for my full lineup. Poku, it seems like his role isn't as great as we saw. And then Robinson Earl, it feels a little uncomfortable to click on at 5.3K, but in this matchup against OKC, I could see it being interesting. And also going back to the Bazley point, they could play a lot of small ball lineups where he could play the 5 at times. And the Clippers are certainly okay about doing that, right? You're going to see Robert Covington play the 5 a bunch at 4.1K. You're going to see Nicholas Batum who gets some opportunity there at 3.2K. Then you got Norman Powell, who's going to play a lot of these different roles. He could play at the 2, 3, 4 if he wanted to at 4.8K and could certainly be in play. Lots to like on both sides of the ball. Obviously, getting this OKC news is really important. If we don't get the OKC news like too early, you can fall back on some of these Clippers. But one thing that I'm thinking about when I build my lineups, I don't know if I want to have Norm Powell, Covington, and Batum on the same team. Maybe I kind of like separate them a little bit where maybe I make a max of 2, whatever's comfortable for you. But I would think about how many of them you are playing on your team because this Clippers team is deeper, I think, than people realize. Look at, just start counting the bodies. Kawhi Leonard, Zubac, Jackson, Wall, Powell, Kennard, Covington, Mann, Batum. That's 9 actual real life players that are like solid basketball guys that could play and cut into the rotation. I didn't even mention a Moses Brown who gets a little bit of a revenge game. Who knows if they're up by 10 and they just throw Moses Brown into the mix for fun. Wouldn't surprise me at all. I could see Boston Jr. pop into the game and make a couple shots and just earn a little bit more time because the Clippers are up by like 10 or 12. And why not just get these other guys some run? So overall, there is some risk to the Clippers guys compared to the Pelicans and the Thunder options.
And the issue is a lot of these guys play like similar positions too. So, I mean, I think Powell plays a lot. I think Covington plays a lot. And after that, I do think it is somewhat risky in terms of the playing time. So agree with the points there. DC, thoughts here, Clippers, Thunder.
Yeah, Clippers are tough. I think we'll see a lot of people go there. I think it was on Saturday. Yeah, I was on the NBA show on Saturday, and they were pretty popular. I think it was Kawhi was out that day. But like I was kind of made the point that Mangone made with guys like Norman Powell, who I think was chalky on that day. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like they've got Reggie Jackson and John Wall at the point guard position. Those are 2 ball dominant guys. And they've got Kawhi Leonard filling in. Like Powell and, Covington and Batum, like these guys are like mostly just camping in the corner waiting for 3-point attempts. And, sure, you could make 4 or 5 of those in a night and, you get a block and a steal and things can go your way, but they're not particularly safe plays. So I'm not sure where ownership's going to end up, but I'm cautious on these Clipper guys. Last game they played an 11-man rotation. We obviously no George, no Marcus Morris, but I don't know. I mean, that brings me down to 9. And they could bring in another guy or 2 and play 10 or 11 dudes. And it's just, I don't feel super great about the Clippers, despite obviously an awesome matchup and despite missing, a big piece in Paul George. Kawhi Leonard, 21 minutes in each of the first 2 games. I mean, that last game against the Suns, he didn't even come in till this, like halfway through the second quarter. Seems like they're being really, really cautious with his minutes. So I was kind of looking at him at 7K on FanDuel, but it's tough. I think probably a maximum I would think of like 25 minutes here. Don't think he's a terrible play, but I'm cautious on the Clippers. The OKC side, I assume at this point that SGA is going to play. I mean, he was marked out this morning, if you looked, upgraded to questionable. We know OKC wants to tank. It's like, I feel like they wouldn't upgrade him to questionable if they weren't going to play him. It's like they don't want to play him, but
That's why they're so stupid. Like they can still play. They can play their guys and still lose. They're still one of the worst teams in the league, even if their main guys play.
The one nice thing I'll say about it is, if any of the OKC guys are playing, that they're fully healthy. Because if they were dinged up at all, they would take the opportunity to rest them. And SGA, I mean, without Giddey out there, who does do a lot of the playmaking and ball handling. Like he's going to have a big role in this game. So I kind of want to save a spot for him. And, you can jump off him. There's Golden State and Phoenix afterward. Plenty of plays there to get to. Make sure you have a plan. But I do think he plays, and they've played him big minutes when he's been in there. So I wouldn't be shocked if he, I don't think he'll beat Luka, but I think he could contend for the second highest raw points on the slate and maybe a little bit lower ownership if people are afraid to go there. So yeah, I do like SGA. I do want to play him if he is in the lineup without Giddey, especially. And then, man, the OKC front court, what do they have? They have 5 eligible centers who have all played minutes this year. I don't know. I don't really trust these guys. I don't know where to go. I mean, I think Poku is the guy that has upside, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he played like 11 minutes. It's just not something that I really am super interested in risking. So I'm kind of trying to hoping to play SGA. If SGA sits, then they are really, really thin in terms of ball handlers. Trey Mann, 5,500, kind of a high price tag for him, but I think he'll have to have a big role. And then, Mango mentioned Isaiah Joe. I think he'll have to play too. I don't want those guys at all, frankly, if SGA plays. But if he's out, I think you got to consider both guys along with Lou Dort. And Wiggins, too, I think is a good call. Mango.
Wiggins, he had some big games last year at the end of the season when, it was all their shitty guys playing. He went off on a few occasions. So I like that call. The front court, too crowded for me as well.
Yeah.
One more game we need. You guys will get there. We got 358 likes. We need 400 for the plays of the day. I probably undershot it because now we're over 820 viewers. So should be easy to get there. 400 for the plays of the day. One more game. We have the Warriors. We have the Suns. Total in this one, 226.5. Phoenix favored by 1.5. Good real life game. In terms of fantasy, the Warriors are a tough team for me to get to. I think if I'm going anywhere, probably Klay Thompson. The minutes are starting to creep up a little bit. 19, 23, 27. If he gets to 30, which I think he can in this game, 5.8K, good price tag for him. He scores well on DK when he's knocking down all those threes. So I think he's a fine option. Not really going to go anywhere else. Like Steph, I can't get there at 9.9 with Luka at 11.1. I definitely want Luka over Steph. Sun side, though, I think more interesting. Chris Paul, good price tag on DK, 7K. Devin Booker has been very safe all season long. Bridges is one of those guys that forward position that we talked about in the mid 5s that's in play. Cam Johnson has a good price tag at 4.8. Then Ayton at 6.7. He's going to be a volatile player all season long in terms of production, but he has 2 games of at least 36 fantasy points, 6.7K. That's good enough for me on this slate. So definitely like the Sun side much, much more for fantasy. On the Warriors side, it's just going to be Klay. We'll stick with you, DC. Thoughts here, Warriors, Suns.
I'm kind of hoping not to have many guys from this game in my lineup, but if things don't break right, like I'll probably have SGA in my main lineups. And if he ends up sitting, maybe I got to pivot to some plays in this game. Like this game is full of plays that will be, I think, relatively low owned, and they're all fine, right? Like all the guys you mentioned, Hoop, like wouldn't hate having them in my lineup to close this slate, but no one here that I'm going to have, I don't think, in core plays, no one that I really want to play. This will be kind of I don't know what the word is, just like break glass in case of emergency, right? If things don't break right, if the injury news doesn't go right, and you got to pivot to some guys in this game, no big deal, right? I don't mind having Cam Johnson at below 5K, or I'll take Mikal Bridges 40 minutes at mid 5Ks if you have to. But, I'll be hoping to not end up on too much of this game, frankly.
Yeah, it's just one of those games that better in real life than in fantasy, in my opinion. Mangoen might have a different opinion. What are your thoughts here? Warriors, Suns.
No, I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying there. A couple just notes, so Chris Paul's high up there in potential assists. So I do think he's a good play, but I do think what's going to happen is, and I mean, we talked about this at the top. Let's say you decide not to lock yourself into that first game. Well, you're like, oh, I'm comfortable playing these Suns and like Warriors, and like everyone's doing that, right? Like, you know how much difference the ownership's going to be on game 1 versus game 2 because of that alone, right? Like, I think people are just thinking, I'd rather have that backloaded spot for the ability you can get for my lineups. That's why I just think maybe grabbing one of these early guys is not like the worst idea on this slate. So just something that I'm definitely thinking about tonight. And like I said, I think Paul's a good play. I think Ayton's a good play. Not guys I'm dying to get into my lineups, but good price tags, could easily have a good game. Andrew Wiggins' production has been great as of late. I don't want to completely ignore what he's been doing. And if you think that these Warriors minutes, like Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, if you think they're still going to stay down and they're still somewhat limited, who is going to benefit? It's clearly going to be a guy like a Wiggins. It could be a Curry. There's definitely options here to go to. And Curry, I mean, he's not going to get talked about at all on this slate. And we know what his upside can be. I mean, he's going to be what? Maybe single digits, while Luka's going to be like 50%. I mean, who's the better play then in tournaments at that point? It's definitely something to think about. And you also get a savings with a guy like a Steph Curry, who's playing against this Phoenix team that it's going to be a fun game. You know, Steph Curry is going to be out there firing for sure. So I certainly think that Steph Curry in tournaments is someone you at least have to think about here today. So I'll definitely think about that when I'm looking to roster guys. But I think if I had to pick a guard to spend up on that's contrarian, I'm hoping it's SGA. That's the guy I kind of think is interesting. I didn't talk that much about Devin Booker. I do think he's a really good play. And one thing that's key about him, he gets that shooting guard eligibility, which is kind of nice. You don't have to put him in at that point guard spot. I'd probably want to slot him in there. He is gaining some ownership today, which I totally understand. I think he's a good play. But like I said, I think SGA is a really sick pivot off of a Devin Booker that you can make really late and gain a ton of leverage just naturally because of what Booker's ownership is going to be versus what SGA can be when he is in and has a legit role, especially with no Josh Giddey in there. Don't think I got too much else to say. I guess Jordan Poole at 6'2" is kind of interesting if he's like a last piece in, but not trying to get to too many of these options. I know others will go to Cam Johnson. You can't play everyone. I don't love Cam Johnson compared to some of these other forwards. I don't love Mikal Bridges. They're in the conversation, and last piece in, I get it, but I think there's other options that I just prefer at that position.
Damn, I didn't realize how hot Andrew Wiggins is
to
start the season. Jeez. 39, 46, 43 fantasy points. Might have to look into that a little bit more. That's an impressive start for the all-star Andrew Wiggins, right?
Yeah, and no one's paying up over Lou Dort at small forward today,
Yeah.
right? Like, look at that position, just forward in general. The actual construction of the slate is no one wants to go above that Dort range to grab a small forward. So you're going to get him naturally just low owned because there's no one else to play up there and no one wants to.
He hasn't even like shot the ball. I guess he hasn't been like unsustainably hot or anything like that. Just playing really well. So yeah. He's interesting.
Yeah, impressive start for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's check out the likes. 408. I hate when you guys get to the number and then you stop hitting it. That's also kind of hurtful. But I did say 400 for the plays of the day. You guys got there. 850 watching. So on your way out, please hit the like button, get those numbers up, and hit the subscribe button as well. But you guys did earn the plays of the day. I'll go first with the Rich Parents play of the day. I'm going to go to the first game. I'm going to go to my guy, Isaiah Stewart, 5.3K on DraftKings. You can play him power forward or center, which is nice, but just very stable production from him. And I think he offers that upside as well. And he gets to go against Porzingis, who he can toss around a little bit. So give me Isaiah Stewart, Rich Parents play of the day. Next, we'll go to Mangone with the sweet Travis play of the day. Who do you got for us?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on it. I think there's like a spend up that I like and a cheap one that I like to go to as well. The tough thing about the cheap one is the positions are going to be kind of a bit of a problem, it seems like. So I'm going to go for the spend up because I think it could be a real difference maker in your lineups. Let's go with Christian Wood. I just think he could have a monster game. Also, keep in mind, this is a little bit of a revenge game for old Christian Wood. Remember, he started that off with the Pelicans, and he was one of those guys that was looking great with them. And then what they say? Hey, you can go to Detroit. We don't want you that badly. And then, of course, then he got Detroit. You know, he played great. Detroit didn't want him. Who knows? These teams just don't know great talent. Then he goes over to the Rockets. They're a team that was embarrassing. And now he's actually on a real team. And he's playing great off the bench. And I do think this game could be really competitive. And Christian Wood could have an absolute monster game, taking advantage of some of those big men that he's going up against that can't play a ton of defense. I mean, think about Christian Wood playing defense against a guy like Larry Nance.
Yeah, it should be low on, very low on play. I think coming off the bench, 7.6K. People don't like guys off the bench, and they definitely don't like guys off the bench that are 7.6K. So like that call. Lastly, we'll go to DC with the Mom's Basement play of the day. Who do you got for us down there, DC?
Yeah, make sure you have a plan in case he's not in there. But SGA, I think, is in line for a big game. I do think he's going to play, upgraded to questionable midday today. No Josh Giddey. Gets some of that Reggie Jackson / John Wall defense, and I assume he'll be lower owned. So if you're playing him again, you got to have a plan because it's not a guarantee he'll be in there. But if he is, I expect him to be no limitations. One simple thing you can do is just have the extra $200. You can simply pivot from SGA to Devin Booker if you want. Of course, you can have more of a complex plan, but that's an easy one to do. Just in case he's not in there. So I'll go, SGA is the Mom's Basement play today.
All right, so we have Isaiah Stewart, Christian Wood, SGA, assuming he's in. If not, you can make that. I mean, yeah, if you have 200, direct pivot to Devin Booker, or, this is an 8 p.m. game, an hour, 8 p.m. Eastern, an hour after lock. I mean, there's a chance we have this news too. So you might even not even need to sweat it. So those are the plays of the day. That's going to do it for us. We have the Up to Lock show coming up next. BigT, JSU, Holden taking you all the way up to lock, covering all the news and talking roster construction. Looking forward to seeing those RPS logos at the top of the leaderboard. But for Mangone, DC, I'm Hoop. Good luck tonight in your contest.